Europe. Well, and the referendum, of course. This is my take on how I'm going to deal with what is really a massive issue. One thing that this illness forces you to do is it forces you to take complex issues and complex problems and simplify them to make them more manageable. Well, the issue with Europe is, yes, indeed, it's a massive question. It's a massive issue, and it's got any number of questions and answers and numbers and figures and statistics to throw you away. And I, probably along with the rest of you, have spent the last 4 or 5 weeks being slowly but surely more and more confused the more and more information that comes out. And to me, basically, Europe is a relatively simple question, a relatively simple problem, overcomplicated by idiots. So this is my attempt to display what my thought processes have been, and a demonstration of roughly the issues that I'm going to take into consideration when I go into the voting booth and make my choice. First of all, it's probably important for me to state that really I'm a socialist. So strictly speaking, it should be a relatively easy question for me to answer. I should be pro-Europe, but there are, obviously, as you've seen, a number of issues that cloud that judgment. Over the last few weeks, we've all been bombarded with numbers that make it expensive to be in Europe, that cost us money, cost us jobs, this, that and the other, and the opposite argument. But the main issue should boil down to basically 2 questions. Yes, there is no doubt that we pay a amount of money to afford us the access to the free market and the movement of people. Now, the main question is whether you believe that that money, that value, whatever that value may be, it might be £5, it could be £50 million, £50 billion, it doesn't really matter. What matters is your perception, or our perception, as to whether that money is worthwhile, whether we get value for money for what we actually spend. Yes, we are one of the, I believe it's 9 or 10 net contributors everybody else takes out, but that was the social idyll of the theory of the social Europe, the integration of Europe, if you like. So your judgment is whether that's worth money or whether we'd be better off with that money in our pockets and going it alone. I don't personally see people who want to come out as little Englanders, as has been bandied about them. There is some kind of economic argument that fiscally we would be better off on our own. And obviously, as you've heard, counter arguments to the contrary, that it would cost us jobs and this, that and the other. What I would say is, no matter which decision we take, there will be short-term financial issues regarding that. So you can vote yes or no, it doesn't matter. That in the broad run, the country will be as well off or as poor as we are now. The only issue would be poor with our money, or poor still donated to even poorer countries. The other issue is that of migration. Now, I don't think really you've seen any politician state that migration is a bad thing, because quite simply, it isn't. Immigration and emigration is a very, very healthy state for every country. People that leave our shores take our ideas and implement them into the wider world, and people that come from the wider world bring fresh ideas and fresh learning to this country. It is, generally speaking, a very, very healthy state of affairs. The argument that's not been put very well really is whether we're in a position to be able to control that immigration or not. And I don't believe that really is an issue for England or Britain or Great Britain or the UK, whichever way you want to put it. I believe that is a massive problem throughout the EU. I think you've had, and I think every single country is struggling for the answer. You have answers varying from the open arm saviour that is Germany to the closed borders, the barbed wire and the guns that is Hungary. Somewhere in the middle is the answer, is the resolution. But I believe that whether we go alone or whether we stay within Europe, that is an answer that Europe and all of its partners need to find, and they need to find soon. So you can take immigration, I believe, off the table. Because we will have to have some form of immigration, and there will have to be some form of control. So I think the basic problem with Europe and the ideal to turn Europe into a United States of Europe, if you like, is you can go into any country in Europe, Eastern Europe, Western Europe, Central Europe, Southern Europe, or even Northern Europe, even Great Britain, and you could ask any individual there where they're from. Now my answer would be, I'm a Mancunian from England, which makes me British, which makes me a British European. And I think you'd get a fairly similar answer down to that the starting point would be, with any person within Europe, the starting point would be their country of origin, followed by the broader aspects, if they were pushed. And that's the main problem, is nationalism. And it's not just us, it's everybody. Absolutely everybody. And although I believe in the ideal of a federal Europe, if you like, that basic problem, that basic issue, leaves us some 250 years behind the Americans, because you go to pretty much any state, any city, any town in America and ask someone where they're from, they'd say they're from America, from the USA. Or Colorado, to be more specific, or wherever. But they go the opposite way around. They instigate the big picture, the nationalism of the big picture first, of the United States of America. If we want to be the United States of Europe, I'm afraid I believe in it, but we are several generations away from that mindset. Now that is something that, a fact we have to accept, but also a fact that we need to, that as Europeans we probably need to work on. The disintegration of the national identity. That scares a lot of British people, it scares a lot of Germans, it scares a lot of everybody. But there needs to be a decision where we're from, who we are and what we're about. So the choices are basically, do we want to be stood alone, taking our own decisions, being the masters of our own destiny? Or do we want to be part of a bigger, more wholesome picture with more allies, free trade, free movement, with similar people of similar ilk? Now, my natural position is one of Europe and being part of Europe. My major issue with that is that Europe really is not, and cannot possibly in its present form, cannot be democratic. Which leads to another problem. Do we want to stick in and try to sort that out and resolve a lot of the many issues of Europe, democracy being the major one, or do we want to be seen to be the first ones that head for the gate and be the ones to lead the disintegration of Europe? I don't know. I really don't know. I think in its present form, Europe desperately needs to reform. It desperately needs to be more democratic. The emergence of more and more social governments throughout the borders of Europe can only force that, can only demand that, or can only break up Europe. And I believe that the United States of Europe is a good idea, a good ideal, badly, at the moment, very badly practiced. And I think that any one of us has to disregard the money, disregard any racist thoughts that we have, or any immigration. Put it, but the term I've heard is putting up the close signs. Well, whether we stay in Europe or whether we don't stay in Europe, that really isn't an issue. That isn't a possibility. It can't possibly happen. People need to come and people need to go. It's a matter of how easy we make that for them. Do we stay in Europe and make it as easy as possible, in and out? And do we stay in Europe to help resolve the issues of Europe and become a major player, as we allegedly are, in the resolving of a better Europe? It really is that simple. Do you want to be part of the party? It's not a perfect party. It's not a perfect environment. It's an environment that needs sorting out. Would you want to be part of that sorting out and have assistance carrying our own problems through that from our other partners, or do you want to go it alone? All of the other arguments, all of the financial arguments, all of the hypocritical arguments, the political decisions, they're just political posturing. All the forecasts are nonsense, purely and simply because we can't forecast with any accuracy 3 months ahead, let alone 10 or 20 years ahead. So if we can't do that, and we all know we can't do that, why even take that into consideration? If you all ignore the minutiae of the arguments that are being presented to you, and realise that those arguments are being presented to you purely and simply for political gain, if you break the situation down, the question down to its basic elements, you'll end up with 2 questions that only really you can answer. I've not made my mind up yet. I know what I'm tempted to do. I'm tempted to stay in Europe and try to reform it. But it is very, very broke. Nobody's given me the answer. The answer will come from me at the end of the day. Will probably be, as with the most of you, will probably be a gut instinct in the end, and I'm not so sure that's the right way to do things. What I will say is, it is very, very important that you go out there and you vote. It's a very big choice to make, and I wouldn't want to be the one complaining about the choice if it didn't go the way, if it proved to not go the way that I really wanted it to go. So use your vote. Don't be over confused by the spurious arguments and the minutiae and the exact numbers, because nobody's got them. They might pretend to have them, but they haven't. Make a straightforward and as honest a decision as you possibly can. Use your vote. Catch you soon. Bye.